For those of you who might not know who Chris Shelton is, he's an ex-Scientologist who's been on Leah Remini's TV show, Scientology in the Aftermath. He has a podcast called the Sensibly Speaking Podcast, and he's written a book called A to Xenu. I'd highly suggest it. He's a great dude, and I had the privilege of speaking to him in a Google Hangout. Check out the links in the description to his book and his podcast. We do a lot of jumping around with the questions, so you might want to check out my video about Scientology to get some basics of their belief system before watching it. There should be a card in the corner that'll take you to that. And there's a part 1 to this video. I'll add a card for that one too. Here's part 2 of our discussion.
You're surrounded by other Sea Org members, and all you're doing is working.
Yeah, and I imagine leaving the base probably isn't much of an option, right? I mean, I guess I don't know, do they monitor people coming and going?
Oh yeah, there's a security force on the base. They're Sea Org members, and they're part of security, and their job is to look in and monitor the Sea Org guys just as much as they're looking out and protecting the base from any external threats. Right, that's part of their job. So if you're wandering around and it doesn't look like you're doing any work and you're sort of slacking off or whatever, some security guy is probably going to see you, and they got cameras all over the place, including inside the buildings. And there's a guy who sits at a booth with, this array of cameras, of monitors, and he's monitoring what's happening on the base all over the place, right? This is just and this is just one little part of this. I mean, this is just security, right? There's also the peer pressure of the group, right? Everybody's there working. So if you're not there working, they're like, dude, what are you doing? And they're kicking your ass and getting you working and this kind of thing. So it's a whole sort of keep itself going kind of system. And that's what I did for another 17 years when I joined that. I joined that group in 1995.
That's very interesting. So let me ask you this. You said that they don't really treat Dianetics as a holy book. It's not really that, right? It's a little bit more of just like a guide to kind of instruct you on how to do this thing or that thing. Is that right? Or
Dianetics would be considered by Scientologists the same way that that Newton's work would be considered by a physicist.
Okay,
it's a book of procedure, and that's how you do it, and you don't do it some other way. Is sort of what I'm trying to get across. I know there are developments. I know Newton is not the be all end all. I'm trying to make a simile comparison here. I'm not trying to be literal.
Right, that makes sense. Okay,
yeah.
So here's what I was kind of linking together here. I was thinking in like I guess a Christian kind of context, you'd have Bible time where you sit down and read the Bible. They don't really have that for like any other kind of holy book in the Sea Org, right? You don't have read your holy book time. Okay.
No, it's not a religion that way.
Right.
It's not faith-based that way. I say that it is faith-based because there are principles in Scientology that you simply have to take on faith. There is no proof. But there's not a holy book, and there's not communion, and there aren't prayers, and there isn't ritual that way. It's a whole different thing. Hubbard described Scientology. He ended up coming up with this as an explanation for it. He said Scientology is a applied religious philosophy. So it has religious status under the government because they applied for it. They define themselves as a religion because Scientology deals with spirituality, the supernatural, what happens after you die. It answers and addresses questions like that, which makes it a religious practice, in the same way that Hinduism or Buddhism are religious practices. It's not a religious practice in the same way that Catholicism or Christianity or Judaism are, where you're going to a worship service and you're giving over, the causation of your life to a higher power. In Scientology, you're the higher power. And the idea is to rehabilitate your spiritual abilities and awareness so that you yourself become a godlike figure. it sounds people who are familiar with Mormonism might think I'm talking in the same way that Mormonism is, but it's different. It's not Mormonism.
Right.
It's Scientology,
Okay.
but it's got more similarities to Mormonism in that sense than it does to Christianity or Judaism or Islam.
Okay, so it's not really fair to compare it to other common Christian cults, I guess
Very
you'd say,
different.
right?
No.
Okay, so
The cult mindset you can compare. I mean, the Westboro Baptists got nothing on
right,
Scientologists as far
right,
as the extremism goes, right?
right.
But the belief structure is totally different.
Very different. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let me ask you this then. How does the cult mindset compare? What makes it and Jehovah's Witnesses and other things a cult, but not other denominations? Like, what is the defining characteristic about those things, do you think?
Well, here's the thing. A cult, a destructive cult specifically, has a number of characteristics, but if you want to get down to the essence of it, a cult is a relationship between a leader and a follower, whether it's 2 people or 2 million people. And that relationship is a symbiotic but abusive relationship.
Okay, so you're
That's
saying
the
that.
essence of it.
So when you say symbiotic, you mean the abuser and the abusee need each other.
Correct.
Okay, do you want to go into a little bit more detail on it?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I finally came up with that as a synopsis of it, but yeah, we can expand on this to a great detail,
okay, all right.
great degree. So the characteristics of a destructive cult are things like a group which fosters and creates an us versus them mentality. They engage in black and white thinking, right? There's not nuances of understanding. There aren't nuances of disagreement. You are either with us or you are against us. There is a very end justifies the means kind of mentality when it comes to forwarding the purposes and goals of the destructive cult. Anything goes as long as it's for the good of the cult. And that can include, I mean, that can go all the way to an extremist, radicalized mindset of violence, which is what you see in radical Islam. It's the same, but the same mechanisms are used to get a person into that state of mind. Gradual indoctrination, gradual acceptance of belief, gradual acceptance of authority. In this case, L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige versus, the local sect leader or, Muhammad or whatever.
Right.
But the same principles are used, right? And by gradual, I use the word gradual because this is not something that happens in one day. This isn't something that happens in 1 year. It takes a while to build up this kind of mindset in someone. So, but these characteristics are part of it. Usually in destructive cults, there tends to be a obsession about money, but it doesn't have to be that way. The leader or leaders are always not to be questioned, right? Unquestioning loyalty is very, very much a part of a destructive cult model. And yeah, I think those are some of the more obvious characteristics that go along with
That
these things.
sounds pretty good to me. I've actually been writing something of a checklist for destructive cults. And the bottom line, the
Oh,
thing that I've discovered when writing a checklist is no cult is going to meet every single point on that list, right? Not every single, there isn't a single cult that will have rituals and unquestioning loyalty and be all about money and things like that. So
correct. Yeah,
that
actually,
is interesting.
Yanya Lalich kind of beat you to it. You might check out
Oh,
her cult checklist because
I should.
that's the one I hit on pretty early on after I got out of Scientology, and I found it to be extremely clarifying. Not just for my own experience, but to understand how not to jump from one cult into another. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, will do that because they don't educate themselves quickly on what it
Hmm.
was that just happened to them. And there is a a gaping hole left in you when you leave a group like this. You give over so much of yourself, and you make so many sacrifices of time and money and energy in your life that when you are forced to, through whatever means and through whatever circumstances, when you're forced to leave such a group, it is an open wound, and it is very, very difficult to acclimate and recover from that activity and that belief system, whatever it is. And so many times people in their pain and their sorrow and their grief will end up filling that void with another group's extremist beliefs, because that's kind of what they're used to. And that's kind of what they're looking for, is some totalist authoritarian system that can guide them in their life.
Somebody tell me what to do. Tell me how to live my life. They
exactly.
They're used to it.
That's
that
right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember, I think I was 18. I actually got disfellowshipped from Jehovah's Witnesses, and I still believed it at the time. I really wanted to be a part of it. For 2 years after being disfellowshipped, I still believed it. I guess in a sense, it was lucky for me that the indoctrination went so deep, because I wouldn't have I may have just jumped right into something else. I mean, it's very possible, you know. So I guess I kind of lucked out there. When
it happens to some people, it doesn't happen to others. Everybody's unique,
right.
You know.
Yep.
I'm just saying there's a certain group of them that do.
There is. I know that's true.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I talk about that only because as a warning signal to anybody who might be listening, to discourage that from happening, right? The best thing you can do when you leave a group like this is chill the hell out, calm down, realize that you're going to have to find some answers, and it's going to take some time. And there really is no way around that. You know,
Yep,
it's just going to take time.
That's true. I've seen people jump to Mormonism, away from Jehovah's Witnesses, even to Catholicism. I mean, extreme Catholicism. Hating Protestants and all kinds of other ugly things.
It gets pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So that happens. And you just asked me, when did I leave? Is that right?
Yeah, I was going to ask, when did you leave? Like, what year was it?
2012 is when I left the Sea Org. 2013 is when I left Scientology entirely.
Okay. So, all right, let me ask you this, actually.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you here, but you say you left the Sea Org and then you left Scientology a year later. Do they not heavily enforce? Like, I mean, you signed a billion-year contract. Obviously, they can't enforce that, but were they not upset enough to kind of expel you completely when you left? Or?
No, it doesn't really work that way, because they still want to hold on to you as a Scientologist, because you're still a potential income revenue source. Right?
That makes sense, yeah.
Oh, yeah, especially after you come out of the Sea Org, because a lot of people who come out still believe in the principles of it. You know, I mentioned these 3 levels of commitment. Well, it's more like a ladder. I mean, you could be a public, you become a staff member, you go back to being a public, you sign another staff contract for a while, then you go back to being a public. Or maybe you go public straight to Sea Org, right? And then you leave the Sea Org and you go back to being a public. So
but they want always bringing in money.
Yeah, they want to keep you on that level of commitment somehow. They don't want to just boot you out. The only reason that they'll kick people out is if they are speaking out against the group, or they're violating the group's rules to some big degree. And they don't want to do that. I mean, they want to hold on to people, especially now. They're shrinking like crazy.
Yeah, so I think you estimated something around, correct me if I'm wrong, like 40,000 members roughly, somewhere.
Something. That's my best guess, yeah, 40 to 50.
So I suspect Jehovah's Witnesses have been padding their numbers for years. Do you kind of suspect the same? Do you think that their numbers are, I mean, I don't know what they're reporting as far as numbers go.
Are you asking me about Jehovah's Witnesses or Scientology?
Oh, no, I'm asking Scientology.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? They've been padding their numbers forever. Okay, here's how this happened. I mean, Kirstie Alley went on Howard Stern last year and said there were tens of millions of Scientologists.
That's a big claim.
Yeah, right. Prior to that, I'd never heard anybody say tens of millions. I had heard millions when I was in the church. And I came to learn that that is just total nonsense. I don't know. I'm avoiding swearing on your show. I don't know if I should be
don't
doing
even
that.
worry about it. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Yeah, it's
go
fucking nonsense. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's just total bullshit. They
Yeah.
here's what happened was they in the early 1970s, if I have the story right, they some executives were being asked, you know, hey, how many Scientologists are there? And so what they did was they looked at the number of book sales that Dianet and how many copies of Dianetics have we sold and all these other books that Hubbard's written, right? And this kind of thing. And they decided that that would be the determining factor. And they said, oh, you know, 5 million members or something, right? Scientology has never had anywhere that number. They never had 1 million members.
That's fascinating.
I don't know that they ever had 500,000, right? I mean, total.
That's
So,
very interesting. Yeah, go on.
but then what happened was, then the next year, the executive comes along and goes, okay, so what's the census figure now, right? And they go, oh, well, I guess it's about the same. And the guy goes, yeah, no, it can't be just the same. We've had a whole year. It has to go up. So they go, oh, well, I guess it's 6 million this year, right? Or whatever. I mean, they're just literally pulling these numbers out of their ass.
Right.
I can speak authoritatively on this because in my experience in the Sea Org, at one point, I held in my hand the list of all the members of the International Association of Scientologists, which is their membership organization. And I saw that list. And I can't recall the exact number, but it was not, I can tell you what it wasn't 1 million. It wasn't even 500,000. It was not more than 100,000.
That's
right?
fascinating.
And that's total. And they've been doing IAS membership since 1984. So there have been a lot of people who signed up as members of the IAS who are out, who want nothing to do with Scientology. I was an IAS member, right?
And what is IAS again? What is that?
International Association of Scientologists.
Okay.
That's the membership group for Scientology. So if you're going to talk about how many Scientologists are there, your metric should be how many members of the IAS are there. Because that's the membership group.
Because everybody has to sign up to that, I guess, right?
Everybody does. When you first walk in the door and you buy a book, they'll give you a free 6-month membership. Right? And then they'll try to sell you a year membership for like, you know, $500 or something, right?
Okay.
And
so
once you're
they're
on,
practically giving it away then.
exactly. And once you're on, you never come off. Right? The membership only lasts for a year, but they'll hold on to your name. And then they'll try to sell you a lifetime membership, which I think at this point is like $4,000 or $5,000. And then they have all these membership statuses. When I was talking earlier about straight donations, this is how they do it, is they try to bump up your status as a member. They have a membership, but then they have a patron member. Then they have a patron with honors. Then they have a silver patron, gold patron, platinum patron. There's probably 30 different levels of membership going all the way up to contributors who have given $50 million. That's like patron platinum meritorious with honors or something. You know what I mean?
Wow,
it's like,
that's crazy.
yeah, and the trophies they give. I mean, they're taller than I am. You know,
Right.
it's crazy.
That's so interesting. I wonder what the trophies are made of.
Oh, just same thing as any other trophies. They got gold and silver and crystal.
Like, I wonder, are they expensive? Are they like really nice? Good.
The ones that they give out at that level, yeah, they're pretty nice. They're not worth $1 million, but they're they might spend $1,000, $2,000, putting one of those things together. But when you're giving it to a donor who just gave you, is giving you a sum total of $50 million. You can spend $2,000 to splurge and give them a trophy.
Wow, that is so interesting.
Yeah, and they're big. They're really big on status in Scientology. It goes back to not just the destructive cult fact, but specifically Scientology is extremely narcissistic. It creates narcissism. It creates status hunger, and so people feed into that to get these membership statuses.
So you want to go into a little bit more detail on that? How do they create narcissists? In what way?
Okay, well, then we have to get into the belief system a bit.
Okay.
Scientology's belief system is about you. I mentioned earlier that it's about making you into a god, right? You are, according to Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard, you are an immortal spiritual being called a thetan. Thetan. Okay? That's the word for it. They don't call it a ghost or a spirit or,
It's
something
roughly
like that.
the same thing, though, or
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's exactly that. It's a living entity that does not have an existence in time, space, matter, or energy. It's completely separate from the physical universe, and yet it has awareness and mobility and causation in the physical universe. However, because of the way things work now, you're trapped in your body, right? You get a body, and you grow the body, and you have a life, and then the body dies, and then you go get another body. And you grow the body, and the body dies, and then you forget, and you go get another one, and
so it's
another
like
one.
reincarnation a little bit.
It's very much like that. Only this has been going on for a nearly infinite amount of time into the past, and will continue going on into the future for a nearly infinite amount of time, unless something changes. And the thing that's going to change that endless cycle of birth and death is Scientology. Not Buddhism, not Hinduism, not Muhammad, not Jesus Christ. Only Scientology has the means and methods to take you out of that endless cycle of life and death. You're so mired into it that you don't even have a memory or awareness of your spiritual nature or your past lives, right? You don't remember them. And these past lives go back for millions and millions and quadrillions of years. I mean, we're not talking about a little bit of time. So you've accumulated a shitload of stress and trauma and pain and agony over all of those years. Even if you led a perfect life, birth is traumatic and death is certainly traumatic. Right? So even if it was just those two events that happened to you that traumatized you, if you've had billions of lives, that's a lot of stress and trauma. Yeah, very much so, right? And it only speaks, Hubbard says, it only speaks to your innate power and native ability that you're not a gibbering mess right now.
Right.
But that's the reason why you will forget your past lives, because they're painful. Who wants to remember that, right? It sucks. I mean, if you look at how people respond to past marriages, or past relationships or past traumas, a ton of people just go, yeah, I don't want to remember that. I don't want to I forget all about it. The eternal sunshine of the spotless mind or whatever that thing was, right? Where you can just forget about bad things that happened to you, right? So it's not like it's that crazy to have this idea that you can't remember your past lives because of this trauma. So Scientology says that you can, through the procedures of auditing, you can recall these past lives and you can relieve the stress and the trauma of all that accumulated mess that you've been experiencing in the past, and therefore build yourself back up to your native state where you were a very powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing being, spiritual entity, who actually is supposed to have the ability to shape matter, energy, space, and time at will.
Very interesting. So now I think I know a little bit about this, but correct me if I'm wrong, and for the audience too, of course. Yep. But the belief is that once you go clear, the next steps are OT, which stands for operating thetan, right?
Correct. And, yeah, you go from being a regular thetan to an operating thetan. Okay. You're in charge. That's what those OT levels are all about, is bringing back your ability to be in charge, or in Scientology, what they call being at cause. You're not at the effect The idea is that you're going to be at cause. If you look at a cause-effect relationship, which end of that do you want to be on when it comes to your life? Right? Wouldn't you really like to be in the driver's seat and be at cause? That's what Scientology is all about.
That is very okay. So now I know that my subscribers probably hear this a lot, but some Scientologists say they can move things with their minds and things like that. And of course, nobody really believes that, right? But
so it's
do you want to
bullshit.
elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, do they believe that? Or
no? Here's what they believe is that they have the potential to do that. I've never met one Scientologist who thought he could move shit with his mind. Because nobody can do that, and nobody's ever demonstrated the ability to do that. But they love the idea of it. Right. They love the possibility of it, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the best possible analogy for this is the Matrix. Mm-hmm. And I hope we're not so many years past the Matrix now that a lot of people haven't seen it. But
I loved that movie.
Yeah, it's the best analogy there is. Scientologists truly think of themselves as that crew of that vessel, right? That is fighting the good fight against the tyranny of the system. And that system has been built to enslave you. And you are so enslaved, you don't even know you're a slave because you're going body after body after body in this endless cycle of life after life. And you just don't even get it. You just don't even know, right? But imagine if somebody could pluck you out of that, show you the truth of it, and then give you the hope that you and everybody else could actually be saved from that totalitarian system of enslavement, right? That'd be some shit, man. That would be like, oh my God, that would be some woke ass shit, right?
Yeah.
And that's how they think of themselves. That's how I thought of myself. I was saving the world by being a Sea Org member.
So
right?
what is it like being so sure of your beliefs and coming from that to now realizing how incorrect you were at that time?
I'm going to be totally bluntly honest with you. It was wonderful to have that level of certainty and surety in what I was doing and my worldview being so absolutely sure that I knew what was going on. It's kind of like a conspiracy theorist. You know how crazy they get because they're so sure that they have some secret knowledge that nobody else has, and they're just tuned in, man. They are woke and nobody else is, right? Like it's this very special feeling. And I don't miss that. I miss the certainty, the feeling of certainty. I don't miss what it was I was certain about because that's all crazy. I'm not saying that
right.
I wish things were that way, right? I'm just saying that when you leave something like that, your whole world is just rocked in a way that is so difficult to explain. You know, it's like going from standing on the deck of a ship that is just sailing the waters and it's just ice breaking. It's just going. Nothing's going to bring this ship down. You can see all the way to the horizon. Everything is just brilliant and clear and beautiful, and that's your life. And then somebody chucks you over the deck, and you're in the raging waters, and you can't swim, and there ain't no life vest. And that's what life is really like. Right. And it's really hard to get used to that.
It is hard to get used to that. I went through something similar. But let me ask you, do you think that you, let me think about how to word this. Do you feel like you would want to have that feeling again, even if you knew that it wasn't true? If there was some way to erase I don't know that it's not true from your ideas, would you go back to it, you think?
Absolutely not. And it's funny how even that is taken up in the Matrix with that character Cypher, right? Who just wanted to go back. I just want to forget. I don't want to remember anything. I want to go be a celebrity. I want to be famous, and I just want to have this great life. And I know deep down that it's all a lie, but I want that anyway because this sucks so hard. I have never had that thought. I would much rather have the brutal honesty of the chaos of life than the false veneer of a certainty that is based on a lie. Because
I am so with you
know?
on that. Yeah, I do. I know. I don't know. I feel I left the religion when I was 18, and I was invested. I had been baptized at like 13 or 14 or something, and I was in it. I believed it. I answered their questions and all that stuff, but I wasn't in it for long enough to have the level of certainty I think that a lot of people have when they're in it. For example, for 17 years in the Sea Org like that, you know. I mean, that's just, there's another level of surety. It's like a drug, you know. It's like just makes you feel so good about being so sure, you know. Just your whole life revolves around it, and it's really fascinating.
Exactly. And just to be clear, I grew up in it.
Right.
So I was a second generation Scientologist. So I never had any other point of view except this, my whole life, right? And that really, you know, sets up some very powerful biases and some very powerful worldviews of how you think things are. And so I've only been out for 4 years, and it's been interesting. It's been a wild 4 years. You know, 2013 was probably one of the worst years of my life. It sucked.
That was the year after you got out, or
that was the year I got out, and that was, but it was also one of the best years of my life,
right?
Because I got out. So, you know, it's a bit of a knowledge. You know, it can be it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, I mean, it sucks ass, but at the same time, you know, I would never go back, ever. I mean, ever. To be liberated from, you know, a prison of belief. Why would you want to go?
Even a literal prison to some extent, right? I mean, you worked at the Sea Org and you worked, 16 hours a day or more? Or
something like that.
I mean, 7 days a week, it's almost a literal prison. It's like a paramilitary situation. I imagine it was so freeing to get out of that finally. Right.
It was wonderful. It's wonderful.
Great. I just wanted to say, before we get off of here, I appreciate you coming and talking to me. And hopefully my viewers can benefit from the knowledge that you've gained through the hard, brutal few years it took for you to get out of there. And hopefully the next years of your life will be just as good as the years I had on the outside. So
absolutely, yeah. No, I've been building back my life, and you know, I'm getting married next year. Things are great. You know,
it sounds fantastic to me. It sounds like you're building a life on the outside of it, and that's the first step. So
that's right.
Once again, thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll talk again. Right?
Great.
All right. That's my discussion with Chris Shelton. He's done a lot for the ex-Scientology community and the ex-cult member community in general. Take a look at his channel. He's worth a watch. Follow both of us on Twitter and Facebook. All links are in the description. Thanks for watching.